Climate change has occurred for billions of years, and with technology, we can now look back on the last 1,000 years of climate history. What we learn from this data could greatly impact our future choices. So what does the history tell us? How does climate change happen? What are the influences on it? Well, we're going to explain all that in this video. And if you'd like to see where we got our information from, go to bearsciences.com. You can read the article there. And you can also read the full scientific paper in our references underneath that paper. And if you like that, subscribe to the free newsletter to stay updated with all the articles. But let's get to the first influence on climate. This research paper details how there has been a clear warming trend since the Industrial Revolution. However, this trend was interrupted when the 19th century was slightly cooler than the 18th century. The reason for this disruption was due to the cooling effects caused by volcanic eruptions in the 1800s, including Mount Tambora in 1815. The gas and ash released from these eruptions blocked the sun's radiation from reaching the surface, resulting in a cooling effect. However, once the cooling effects dwindled, the 1900s saw a rapid rise in temperatures continue. As without the ash clouds now preventing sunlight from reaching the surface, these radiations from the sunlight can now heat up the Earth, leading to these increased temperatures. However, this trend in rising temperatures was once again interrupted briefly due to volcanic eruptions such as Mount Aung in 1963, causing a brief cooling period between 1950 and 1980. However, just because an eruption occurs doesn't mean it will have a significant influence on the climate. We see that volcanic eruptions have happened before, and it might impact the local communities and the local region, but doesn't mean it will have a full-on effect on the globe or global temperatures. It has to be a very big and very full-on eruption, such as the ones we previously mentioned. Now, one of the more common and famous reasons for climate change is the greenhouse gas effect. But how do we know that the greenhouse gas effect impacted climate in the past? Well, we know this through physical evidence such as tree rings and ice cores. They can gather this information from looking at the color or fadeness of tree rings, as well as the gases trapped in the ice cores, and they can date these to see at what period of time in the Earth's history were these temperatures occurring. The research paper also mentions that the Industrial Revolution and human activities are credited with the increase in greenhouse gases today, which has resulted in them having the strongest influence on global warming. The researchers also mention how aerosols and other human-made pollutants have a significant effect on the climate. And if you want to look at that information, read the full article at bearsciences.com. It's a very short and easy read. And subscribe to stay updated with all our latest articles on any scientific topic. And you can also become a member to get any of your questions answered with the science backing it. But let's get back to another big impact on climate change, the ozone layer. Now, a lot of environmental and climate activists, especially in the late 1900s, were trying to raise awareness for the impacts having a hole in the ozone layer could have on the environment and the climate. But what does history and the science tell us? Well, the thinning of the ozone layer does significantly influence the impact of solar forcing. This is the amount of energy or radiation from the sun that reaches the Earth compared to the amount of energy that leaves or is bounced off the Earth. So with the ozone layer, it plays a crucial role in having some of the sun's radiation being bounced back into space and not absorbed by the Earth. Some still seeps through, which allows the Earth to heat up and give us the temperatures we have today. But now, as the thinner the ozone layer gets, the more radiation from the sun and UV will reach the surface of the Earth, thus seeming to heat up the planet. However, the research suggests that there is limited evidence that solar forcing has a significant effect on global temperatures, with various studies reporting that it only has a moderate impact on global warming. However, this doesn't mean we can just disregard the effects of having a hole in the ozone layer. Now, this doesn't just affect our temperature of the Earth, it can affect weather patterns such as heavy rain and floods, and even how our oceans work. And these are only a couple of the various factors of climate change that have been exhibited in the past 1,000 years. Another example is land usage, deforestation. There are so many more examples and influences on climate. It's a very complex issue. And if you'd like to learn more about the evidence and the science on climate change and what causes it, you can go to bearsciences.com, read this article that we've been talking about, but also check out all our other ones. We have various ones on climate change, but also on animals, the environment, health and diet, so many for you to read. And you can subscribe to stay updated with all our latest articles so you don't miss one. And you can also become a member to receive early access to these and other exclusive perks, such as getting your questions answered in one of our articles guaranteed with the science backing it.